Today, we are going to talk about some of the big names down in Toledo, the call-up candidates, if you will, and if there's a way for them to get on the roster going forward. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Friday, May 10th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome in. Happy Friday to all. The Tigers had an off day on Thursday, so we don't have a game to go over. At the end of the episode, we're going to talk all about the weekend. City Connects debuting, series against the Astros. We'll preview that series, all that good stuff. But we're going to spend most of the episode talking about some of the players who have, I guess I'll say, made an argument to get called up, because there is a lot of things being thrown around on social media and online and just within the fan base in general about, send this player down, send this player down, send this player down. Well, it takes two to tango, right? You can't just send them down and not have an idea of who you're sending them down for, who you are calling up to replace said player. And I have seen a handful of names already, and we're only, 5-6 weeks into the season. I've seen a handful of names thrown around for, candidates and players that certain parts of the fan base want or have suggested maybe to get called up. So we're going to take a look, kind of break down at, I don't know how many names I have here, 6 or 7, just some of the names that you see a lot when you hear the conversation about who should get called up, because this offense is struggling objectively. And I think everyone's first reaction initially, for right or wrong, is who can we replace these players with? And we have to make sure that there is somebody to actually replace them with. So, for instance, let's start off with Keston Hiura. Keston Hiura got off to an absolutely smashing start to the season. The first few weeks, he was crushing the baseball, home runs left and right, hit a grand slam down there at one point. One of the games I watched, he was crushing. Keston Hiura's OPS is down to 771. And he is hitting 219 against left-handed pitching. Now, he's a righty. You have to remember that Hiura is one of those weird reverse split guys where he actually hits much better against righties than lefties. In his last 13 games, that's not, nothing. That's like since late April. That's like April 23rd, April 22nd, somewhere around there. He's hitting 192 with a 573 OPS in, again, AAA. There's always been a question about his ability to hit velocity. I think that's still somewhat of a question. We already talked about the fact that he's a reverse split guy. Defensively as well, he is, I don't want to say positionless, but he could play first, I guess. But I know there's a lot of Torkelson haters out there, but Torque still has the upside that this organization is going to see through. They are. I don't expect to see too much of Keston Hiura unless there is an injury to Torkelson or he's hitting this poorly still 2 to 4 weeks from now. Then maybe that conversation arises. But even then, Hiura also has 3 dates in his contract spread throughout the season. I think one of them was right before opening day. They're not technically opt-outs, but it's basically like every team gets to say, hey, do we want Keston Hiura on our major league roster? And if the answer is yes, then we got to work out a trade and find a way to get him there. So there's not even a guarantee that this dude is on the roster in Toledo throughout the entire season. I also understand the optics of another team adding a guy who's been hitting well in Toledo for the Tigers when the Tigers major league roster is hitting as poorly as it is. I completely understand the optics of that. But as we've discussed, the organization is really, man, the longer that Torkelson struggles, the more they are just really between a rock and a hard place. he has to turn it around. And I know that's a fairly obvious thing to state, but I don't really see the organization just putting a guy who hit 30 home runs a season ago in, Toledo in early May because there's a guy with a 770 OPS in Toledo that hasn't been in the big league since 2022 behind him. Like, you know what I mean? That's just that's not like, oh my goodness, we need to switch these two, right? And I think they're still going to hold on to the upside. So I know that name got thrown around a lot, especially the last few weeks. Every time Torkelson goes over, I have to read 3 or 4 comments in my comment section about Keston Hiura. I get it. And again, he started off the season really well. But at this point, again, that last part there, that last sentence I just read is really my biggest reason as to like why I just don't see them. I just don't see that happening. I really don't. And he's not a very good defender really anywhere else. So I don't expect Hiura. Honestly, I don't expect Hiura to make it through the entire season in the Tigers organization. But if he does, we might see him for, a couple weeks at some point. If there's an injury, then we might see him, obviously. But I'm really not going into the rest of the season expecting to see a whole lot of Keston Hiura. Okay. Let's talk Jace Jung. Jace Jung this season in Toledo has a 279 average and a 907 OPS. His walk rate is 15.8%. That's really good. The strikeout rate is now down to 27%. I say down to because there was a solid first 3 weeks of the season-ish where it was well into the 30s. He had a very, very, very high K rate. And the whiff rate is over 30% still. It's, 32, 33% there in the minors. So we talked about this earlier in the week to an extent, right? Like this organization has proven, again, for better or for worse, whether you agree or disagree is fine. I'm just telling you what I am seeing. This organization has proven that they are not going to, quote unquote, rush a prospect to help the major league team. That is not a trade-off that they are willing to make. They are going to prioritize the development of the prospect over, we need offense at this position. We're just going to rush this dude up to see if he can help and break through right now. Right. So again, I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's what I am seeing from the outside of this organization. I still think the organization wants him to improve on his swing and miss stuff. The strikeout numbers, again, they've gotten better, but I think they want him to improve on that more. The whiff rate is still pretty high, despite the improved K rate as the season has gone along here. We're also like, and this is a comment to make just in regards to this whole conversation. Like we are still just barely over a month into this thing, right? We still have so much baseball left to be played. We are going to see guys on this list. Injuries are going to happen. Players are going to get sent down. It's like we have a long, long road ahead. Okay. This is not like none of these decisions have to be made tomorrow, I guess is my point. But I understand the lack of patience. And at some point, Parker Meadows happened. I think that's a sign that the organization is, we're, from here on out kind of thing. We're really going to be not put these players under more pressure because obviously that's never your goal, but they're going to be more under a microscope and you're going to have the conversation about sending players down, Colt Keith, etc., a little bit with more intent now that they've proven that they'll do it with someone. We're far enough into the season where they feel comfortable doing it with anybody. So I have a couple more things to talk about with Jace Jung. I want to finish up that conversation. He's hitting lefties really well. I still think there's a couple more things they want to see out of him aside from just like the whiff and strikeout stuff I just talked about as well. So we'll finish up that, then get on to a few more players. And then at the end, like I said, we'll preview the Astros series. All right. We will do all of that right after this. Going to talk to you all today about our friends over at Stitch Fix. With Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget, and they do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. You can easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that will work for you. Stitch Fix makes it so easy. I don't like to shop personally. We just talked about earlier this week when the City Connects came out. I'm the last person anyone should be getting fashion advice from. So I get someone else to do it for me. And it's honestly great. I cannot say enough good things about it. It's fantastic. They saved me time and effort. Plus, it's someone who actually knows what they're talking about and knows what actually will look good on me. I get outfits that make me look and feel fantastic. And if you don't love something, you can just send it back. No pressure, no stress at all. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free. Style that makes you feel good and look good. Get started today at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $20 off of your first fix. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $20 off. stitchfix.com/MLB. Must redeem within 7 days of sign up. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in. As always, making us your first listen every day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back on Monday recapping the 3-game series against the Astros that we'll preview at the end of this episode. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, the free 24/7 streaming channel, giving you all the biggest stories in the sports world from all of our fantastic hosts here at Locked On. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel for free or watch in the free Fire TV channels app. Okay, so a few more comments about Jace Jung. I think they want to see him really do well against Velo, and that might be something that they can't fully do until he is truly integrated at the MLB level, right? But I do think that that's something that they kind of have their eye on as well. Like I said before the break, he's been hitting really well against lefties so far this season, which is a fantastic sign. There's a lot to get excited about with Jace Jung. I just don't think he's getting called up anytime soon. Like, not to put a damper on things, right? I know that's like the shiny new toy. Like, everyone wants to see these guys kind of fly through. But if he is truly a third baseman now as well, like Gio's about to come back, Ibanez has been playing well, etc. Like, they're not going to call him up to be a utility player, is my point. They're not just going to call him up for like Zach McKinstry. That's not going to happen. They're going to guarantee him at bats. And right now, that is in AAA, whether we like it or not. But there's also, on the positive spin of this, you know, the longer term outlook, there is no other long-term third base option in the entire organization right now outside of Jace Jung, literally top to bottom. Major league level, minor league level, any of the levels of the minor leagues, it doesn't matter. He is 1A. He is it. The only now they could go out and sign a free agent. They can make a trade outside of the organization. Improvements are always on the table. We'd hope. But, you know, internally, he's kind of it. So he'll get a chance at some point. I really do think he gets a chance at some point this year, I'll even add, even if it is just September call-ups or limited at-bats at some point. But, you know, beyond this year, it really does seem like he is going to be a high priority for them, which is great. Again, he's been hitting the ball really well when he does hit the ball. Just, again, I think they want him to cut down on his swings and misses and strikeouts still. Akil Baddoo. Always a interesting conversation. You know, so far for Baddoo, he's had a pretty on-brand performance so far in AAA, which is not bad, but it's also just not great. He's been pretty much what he has been. He's hitting .214 against lefties, and he's crushing righties. He's got a lot of steals this year, which I think is a great sign. I think that's something that they've wanted him to increase over the last couple of years. I still think Baddoo is like a really easy call-up if a corner outfielder goes down. And they need someone to replace him. I still expect him to play in Detroit this year at some point, maybe even an extended period of time, right? This is a guy that was in the minors at one point early last season and ended up playing more games at the major league level than the minor league level. Like, that's still very much on the table. It's still early May. But I do think it was telling that with the Meadows demotion, Valade was chosen over him. Valade wasn't even on the 40, right? That dude had to get added to the 40-man roster to get promoted. And he plays a few more positions, right? A little bit more positional versatility. Baddoo's strictly corner outfield. But I think two things really stand out to me when talking about Akil Baddoo. A, I don't think the organization's ever going to hand over the keys at center field at this point, which is like not a new, angle or anything. I think we're all pretty well aware of that. But like, if there was even a chance that that was possible when Parker went down, I think he would have been the call. But B, because Valade isn't getting handed the keys in center field either, I just don't think he again, like the profile or the player just don't look super different. Again, 5-6 weeks into the season than he has. He doesn't look bad down there. And I think he'll certainly get at bats at some point, maybe even decently soon. I mean, who knows? But his numbers right now are pretty close to identical to what his AAA numbers have been each of the last 2 years. Like he has 3 seasons of AAA ball consecutively that all look nearly identical. And in his major league time across those 2 seasons, he's hit, poorly at the major league level. So I just think he looks pretty similarly to how he has. And also, I think the biggest factor in all of this, and this is what we'll end on before we move on to Buddy Kennedy here, is just that I think the only good hitters on the major league roster right now happen to be corner outfielders. And that's kind of as simple, even if you disagree with everything else I just said, that part I think is pretty objective, right? Like Riley Green, Mark Hanna, and Kerry Carpenter are maybe your 3 best hitters. So like tough, like that's just how it goes sometimes. But I still expect him to get major league at bats at some point. It's just a matter of whether it's 20 or 120. So we'll see. Buddy Kennedy, we've obviously already seen him a little bit this season for a short period of time. We kind of know what he is, I think, at this point, right? And I think we probably see him again at some point as well. If Colt Keith continues to struggle and they send him down, I think Buddy Kennedy is probably the lead candidate to replace him, at least if that happens, in the next few weeks. I think he's probably the clubhouse leader. But like he's going to walk. He can play several positions. He's fast. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw him a few times this year, as far as like kind of a yo-yo player, right? Like he goes, it's a soccer term for those who follow, European soccer, like the teams that go from the Prem to the championship back and forth, right? Like I kind of expect him to be something like that. I'm sure we'll see him, a couple of weeks at a time periodically throughout the whole season, but like he's not a long-term option, obviously, but he looked fine. And I think he's got some tools that can provide, solid depth. Obviously, Buddy Kennedy is not changing how this major league roster looks. And how anybody feels about this offense long term. But again, if Colt Keith continues to struggle and 2-3 weeks from now we get to a point where it's like we have to send this dude down, then Buddy Kennedy's probably the answer in my eyes. Ryan Kreidler and Eddie's Leonard, they are both hurt and haven't played since, I want to say, the first week of the season. So we'll keep tabs on that. Kreidler, I think, is going to be out for a decent amount of time. Eddie's, I think, might be a little bit sooner, but neither of them have played in almost a month now, unfortunately. So they're not on the table for this conversation. The next one is probably the biggest one, I would say. I think that's probably safe to say. Let's talk Justyn-Henry Malloy. We'll do that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Policy Genius. Policy Genius saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. Look, Policy Genius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it. You can talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step and easily compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks and find your lowest price. They also have no incentive to choose one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance fully. Thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customer reviews who found the best fit to fit their needs. So check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonmlb or click the link in the description of this episode to get a free life insurance quote and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonmlb. Also going to tell y'all about our friends over at DoorDash. Sunday is Mother's Day, and get something thoughtful for mom this Mother's Day with DoorDash. You can surprise her from wherever you are with fresh bouquets, the latest tech, gift cards, self-care treats, and so much more to make her day that much better. You can pair flowers with a gift card so she can celebrate any way she wants. If she's a bookworm like my mom, you can try a bookstore gift card. Does she love a good latte? Well, you get her a gift card for her favorite coffee shop. You can't go wrong. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off of your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, or grocery store need with the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in as always. Let's talk Justyn-Henry Malloy. First off, I know there was a crowd of people that wanted him over Valade when Valade got called up because Valade wasn't on the 40-man either, right? And they still chose Ryan Valade, and obviously he had a great first game. But I know that, Malloy is somebody that there's still a large portion of the fan base that wants to see if this dude can be a long-term option for this team. He is currently hurt. It is an undisclosed injury, as reported by Evan Petzold of the Detroit Free Press. But he has now not played in, I believe Evan said, 5 straight games as of Thursday. So that's why he wasn't the call up. But I'm assuming he's not on the IL. We can somewhat assume that might make me look stupid. You know what they say about assuming. But he's not on the IL, I'm hoping at least. And Evan had an interview with him, asked him some questions, and he made it sound like Malloy made it sound like it was pretty precautionary. I think that's the exact word he used at one point. So we can hope that it isn't a long-term thing and he'll be back out there relatively soon. So talking about his play on the field, he's hitting really well again. He's walking a boatload again. And I still think they want to see improvements in his whiff rate. His whiff rate is still decently high. His strikeout rate isn't astronomical, honestly, but the swing and miss rate, especially last year, the big talking point from a lot of people was the whiff rate in the strike zone, right? Doing damage on the pitches that are actually in the zone, because we know he can walk. We know that he has fantastic discipline and a great eye. So I think that they may still want to see some improvements in that department, but he is making really solid contact. His line drive rate has spiked. It is way up from last year, and it's still very early in the season. And I'm not saying that that's going to necessarily hold as high as it is, but like it is, a pretty solid amount higher than it was last season. Weirdly, he's hitting horribly against lefties, which I don't think will last, and I'm not really too worried about, but it's something to note. Regardless, sitting like under 200, like really, really poorly. The biggest talking point is like, I have no clue what they think of his defense at this point. Genuinely, I third base is out of the question. And I completely get the frustration of, and I echoed that frustration earlier this week, right? About, this organization talks about how much they care about defense and how important that is for like these guys' development. And then like Malloy is hitting and we're losing games because of poor defense, but we're not hitting either. It's like, well, if we're going to lose because of poor defense anyway, we might as well bring up the guy that can hit. I totally get that. But again, as I said earlier with the Jace Jung conversation, they're not going to prioritize helping the team right now over long-term development. They're just not. And that is going to, frustrate people. But that's what I see again from the outside. I'd really like Malloy to get a chance this season. I've said that. I said that a lot last season, certainly as well. Remember, he's injured at the moment, like we said, but when he's healthy again, maybe that's a more serious conversation for the Ryan Valade spot specifically. Like if Valade maybe cools off or doesn't hit long term. But again, like the organization views him as a corner outfielder. And those are the only players on the team that are hitting right now, are all corner outfielders. So like it's Valade's spot, and that's like kind of it. And like obviously injuries will happen and whatnot. He'll have an opportunity to crack the roster at some point. He's also not on the 40-man, but like I'm not really worried. This isn't a 40-man that there's like no way, there's no, like cracks to find room for. You can find spots on the 40-man roster if you really want to. So I'm not really too worried about that. But that's kind of how I see the situation with Justyn-Henry Malloy currently. I expect him to get an opportunity at some point, but I don't think that one's going to be necessarily anytime soon either. I know that really rubs people the wrong way. I agree. Like I would love to see this dude sooner rather than later. But for right now, he was hurt when Valade got called up, and the other corner outfielders are the only good hitters you have on your freaking team right now. So it's not going to happen. Okay, one more just kind of like really fun, I don't know, dark horse, sleeper candidate, whatever you want to call it. Andrew Navigato has had a great year down in Toledo. He has an 840 OPS. He's 25, about to be 26 years old. Has played shortstop pretty much exclusively this year, but has played, second, some other positions at some of the lower levels of the minors. If they clearly didn't have an issue adding Valade to the 40, I don't think that, if it really came down to it, that they would have an issue adding him. And the biggest reason I say that is because this team doesn't have a ton of infield depth on the 40-man roster right now, right? People are like, you got to send down Colt Keith. You got to send down Colt Keith. For Buddy Kennedy, and that's it. That's the only infield minor leaguer on the 40-man besides Ryan Kreidler, who, like I said, is hurt. So I guess you could do it for Buddy, but that's it. And Gio's about to come back. I do think that if there is any player not on the 40 that's not being talked about really, that I could see maybe sneaking his way into it at some point, not anytime soon, but maybe way down the road, I think it would be Andrew Navigato here. So shout out to Jason, by the way, the OG Navigato truther on Twitter. Great follow, by the way. A lot of great Pistons stuff as well. A few other noteworthy players. Justice Bigby struggling this year in AAA, unfortunately. Dylan Dingler's been pretty meh offensively. And catcher change isn't happening anytime soon. I know that neither of them are hitting super well. Rogers has been a lot better lately, but there's a lot more that goes into catcher than just what they do offensively. I promise they are not, barring an injury, Dylan Dingler's not touching the majors anytime soon. Again, then I'm just recycling the conversation. There's not a ton of infielder options on your 40-man outside of Buddy Kennedy at the moment. And so that's just where we stand. So you can want Colt Keith to get sent down if you believe that is better for his development, which I'm not sure it is. I think at some point it becomes better. Absolutely. I'm not saying you leave him up here to have a 400 OPS all year, but he needs to be able to time up major league hitting. And I think that you kind of maybe just have to bite the bullet and grit this one out until he turns a corner. I'm hoping that RBI single the other day can maybe help him, get going. He was pulling the ball. At least that's something, but we'll see. Again, this is the biggest part of this conversation. We are still 5-6 weeks into the season. There's still a lot to go. But I just wanted to run down. I think it's important to kind of paint the picture here of, okay, you want so-and-so sent down for who? And I think it's important to go over those candidates. And I'm not trying to tell you, if you really think that one person should get called up and I said that I didn't think so, I'm not telling you that you have to agree with me or feel the way I did. I'm trying to paint the picture so, you come to more of your own conclusion than anything else. But I do think that that's an important conversation to have, which is why we did it here. Disagreement is beautiful because that's the beautiful thing about ball and about sports, man, is that there's a lot of, there's an infinite amount of ways to build a winner. And if there was one just, cookie cutter way for development and for winning, then everybody would just do that. And that's the fun part of these conversations. So let's talk this weekend. You play the Houston Astros. The pitching matchups will be Framber Valdez versus Casey Mize, Christian Javier versus Tarek Skubal, and Justin Verlander in Comerica against Jack Flaherty on Sunday. Framber Valdez gets hit pretty hard, but they are all on the ground. This is one of the elite ground ball pitchers in our sport, very similar to how I talked about Marcus Stroman last weekend against the Yankees. But Valdez, maybe even more so. Framber Valdez led the league in ground ball rate in 2022, 100th percentile, led the league. He is incredible at that. And not gonna, have like maybe the greatest. His ERA is pushing 4 right now. Maybe not gonna have the greatest ERA in the world, but like he is gonna keep the ball on the ground and is gonna be a tough pitcher to navigate through. So try and lift the baseball as best you can. Didn't work last weekend. Not sure why it would work this weekend, but we're thinking positive. Okay. Casey Mize 1-1 with a 3.98 ERA. Framber 1-1 with a 3.97 ERA. So they almost have the exact same numbers. Looking for a bounce back from Casey. His last outing wasn't awesome last weekend against, obviously, the Yankees. Looking for a little bit more command from the splitter, specifically a little bit more effectiveness from the splitter. And then just like that slider to move me. We've been talking a lot about his slider lately. I would really like to see his slider and go, wow, that really moved me, maybe even to tears. I just want to feel a little bit more confident in his slider is what I'm trying to say, if I'm serious for a second. Christian Javier against Tarek Skubal. I mean, arguably the two aces of these teams. Javier, just like, of course, Javier hasn't pitched since April 14th. And of course, his first start back looks like it's going to be Saturday. Just so on brand. He kind of struggled last season. But like when he's been great this year when healthy, just been great period this year, and has elite swing and miss when he is right. 2 years ago was one of the better pitchers in baseball. Absolutely disgusting slider. Disgusting slider. And then Sunday's Justin Verlander, 1-1 with a 4.43 ERA against Jack Flaherty, who's 0-2 with a 3.86. Verlander's fastball has just really not been effective this year, which is kind of sad because that was like not his whole thing. He had a lot of great things, but it started with the fastball, right? That was the first thing that he hung his hat on, was having, one of the better fastballs of any starter. And just hasn't been effective so far this season. Hasn't been getting swings and misses really this year at all. So maybe the age is finally starting to show, but at the end of the day, he's still Justin Verlander pitching at Comerica Park. I am not going to hold my breath for the Tigers to necessarily beat him around a ton just because of that fact. Yeah, best Tigers pitcher in my lifetime, certainly. And I always enjoy watching him pitch at Comerica, no matter where he's pitching these days. So we'll see. Look, City Connects this weekend. Look, I know some people hate him, some people love him. Whatever. Let's just see how they look on the field. Let's try to win some ball games. Look, if we go undefeated in the City Connects like the Rays do, like they're 5-0 in theirs, I think we can all agree if we're winning ball games in them, I don't care how ugly they look. They can wear shorts and tank tops. If they're winning ball games, that's what they're gonna wear. All right, that's gonna be my opinion. The Astros have gotten off to a really slow start. They've been pretty brutal this year. They did just win a game Thursday night against the Yankees to stop a losing streak, but they are still 13-24 on the young season. They've gotten some good production still from like Jeremy Pena has been good. Jose Altuve has been incredible. Kyle Tucker has been incredible. One of the more underrated players in the sport. But like Jordan's been like, okay, but he hasn't been like prime, like Jordan. OPS in the high 700s, average around 240, 250. And then the biggest story is Alex Bregman has been terrible. And I don't mean like, for like his standards. I mean like he looks like a Tigers hitter. Like his OPS is 530. Like he looks really, really rough. So that's been one of the bigger storylines for them as well. All right. So you got an opportunity to take advantage of a team that is struggling. They are spiraling. They have not gotten it together. The pitching's been weak. The offense has been weak. They can't line anything up. The bullpen has struggled. You have an opportunity to take advantage of a good team that is playing really poorly. You have to take advantage of those types of games. Also, just the sheer fact that you're 1-5 in your last 6. The 6-game road trip didn't go very well. And you have an opportunity here to get back on track against a team that's almost 10 games under 500, 11 games under 500. And then you play the Marlins after that. Your next 6 are very, you have the opportunity to do things. I don't want to jinx it. All right. We'll talk to you on Monday. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch you all then, baby. Go Tigers.